underground cities, Derinkuyu, Cappadocia, Turkey, which was ancient Greece, of course, way before that, before the Deluge of 12,000 years ago, 10,000 BC. Secret tunnel systems existed stretching from Scotland to the Mediterranean. Nectanebo, one of the last pharaohs of the original pharaonic line of Egypt, who was also said to be the true biological father of Alexander the Great, was adamant in saving the Abydos temple of Seti, first of ancient Egypt, because of the fact that he believed that the ancient gods out of earth had landed there and left hieroglyphic proof, such as these aircraft of ancient times, which we are using even in the present day. There was a reason why Alexander the Great conquered east of Greece into the Persian Empire all the way to India, besides the fact that he wanted to get rid of the Persons putting under the yoke of slavery all of the free peoples of Europe, Greece and west of Europe. Alexander the Great was also in biblical prophecy of the book of Daniel. I'll leave a link to one of my previous videos detailing how one of the very significant tasks he was in charge of was to find and record all these Nephilim hybrid human creatures, find their underground secret dwelling places, and seal them. And most of them were sealed with various types of layers of metals and pyramids capping them off, because of the fact that, for example, they could not touch copper or brass. They would not be able to escape. This is also confirmed by one of the Byzantine Christian saints, the early Christian saints, as to what was written as testimony of Alexander's capping and imprisoning these Nephilim hybrid creatures in their hiding places. They looked like half dogs, half cows, and they were six-fingered and many-fingered and toed, plus the fact that they were eaters of human flesh. So we are aware that archaeologists are coming up with the actual scientific proof as evidence of actual tunnel systems, ancient tunnel systems stretching from Scotland all the way to the Mediterranean. And we even have these as evidenced by beautiful findings of fantastic underground dwellings and complex cities of the Pueblo Native American Indians of Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, the Four Corners area. And they have tremendous knowledge of how to properly build these refuges. They were enough to hold up to 20 to 60,000 people. They had storage areas for food, people, families, and they were also a refuge for any type of an earth impact event, such as there, for example, the Pueblo Indians, the Kachina, which would come every several thousand years and have an earth impact of devastating, unbelievable destruction. So what did these tunnel systems, these ancient underground tunnel systems, serve? What kind of purpose did they serve? Well, for one thing, in Greece, for example, it was a refuge and a way of hiding from their enemies. For example, during the Battle of Marathon, the local residents of the area of southeast Athens had a tunnel system over the mountains, through the mountains, that would take them all the way down to the port of Piraeus, and from there take ships to take them to the various islands of the Saronic Gulf. So it was a way to escape their enemies. And another thing is that these tunnels from Scotland to the Mediterranean did not always connect with each other. Well, hopefully that would have been some kind of an ancient day border control, in that it was a good way to segregate peoples from areas, from regions that should not have had complete contact unless they went through some kind of an approval from authorities of the other regions. And of course, it was also another barrier to any enemy that would have had access to these tunnels. They would not have been able to flood the whole tunnel system and that way put an end to humanity that was hiding in these tunnels. All the way from Europe, especially in Greece and even in the United States, people have recently, or even up to 100 years ago, have been finding large skeletons, huge skeletons, many fingered and toed skeletons, and it's confirming what was in the Old Testament of the Holy Bible. Now, the residents of most of these areas, of most of these countries, by word of mouth would tell people where these tunnels were. Not everybody knew. One example of a Greek person who saved a lot of people recently being in the mid-17th century, was Saint Philothea of Athens. Greece at that time was under Turkish occupation, and for over 400 years the Greeks were slaves to the Turks. Saint Philothea, of course, was a Christian widow. She was rich, she was affluent, and her purpose as a Christian was to have philanthropy and charity to widows and orphans and save their lives by hiding them in the underground secret tunnel systems under the Athens area. A lot of these tunnels have been recently found by the construction of the underground subway in Athens. And they were huge. Some of them were so huge you can fit a horse and chariot system inside. That's how big and tall they were. Now, these systems have various connecting areas that are big enough to seat hundreds of people. They also have areas that are chambers for teaching, for school systems, areas that are blocked off with stone doors like this one for protection, areas that were storages for food and oil and wine, and areas that were for smaller family living quarters. These tunnels were, for example, in the area of Cappadocia in ancient Greece, modern-day Turkey, have been chiseled out of a stone which is a type of a limestone, sandstone, type of mudstone, and it's pretty soft. But the construction of this tunnel system and dwelling underground caves were done by architectural knowledge, so that these things after 12,000 years have not caved in whatsoever. And you can see that they even have tremendous security systems with these stone doors, stairways, and you can imagine how many thousands of people had used these underground dwelling areas to protect themselves. This is in Derinkuyu, Cappadocia of Turkey, where the first Christians used the Derinkuyu, Cappadocia area as their first catacombs and protection from the persecution of the Romans, of the Roman Empire, until, of course, Christianity became a free religion in the mid-4th century, around 325 AD, with Constantine the Great. That example of these underground secret tunnel systems being used even during the persecution of the Christians, And again, they were used, obviously, during the persecution of the Christians, during the Ottoman Empire and the enslavement of the Greeks from the downfall of Byzantium in the early 15th century. We even have the underground secret tunnel systems, the ancient tunnel systems of Athens being used during the Second World War by the Greek partisans. Who knew of them? The few who knew of them were, of course, the architectural students who went up onto the Acropolis, took down the German flag one night and put up the Greek flag. And the next morning, the Germans saw that the Greek flag was flying over the Acropolis, even though they had conquered Greece and the German flag should have been flying there. And this was because of the knowledge of some of the architectural students of these secret underground tunnels. I myself have a book on that. I haven't gotten into it. It's very complex because it's got tunnel systems, ancient tunnel systems full of maps under the greater Athens and suburbs areas. One of my neighbors recently told me that under the mountain system north of Athens, there are some people who know of these ancient tunnel systems, and that these tunnel systems are secure, safe refuge in case of any type of an attack or a nuclear disaster or any type of an impact, and that they're always supplied with fresh food. There are not that many people that know of them. Isn't that something? And this one here is also of Göbekli Tepe in southeast Turkey, a very old tunnel system having columns which depict various types of animals and hybrids. And this Göbekli Tepe is in the Anatolia region of Turkey, southeast Turkey. The tell includes 2 phases of rituals use dating back to the 10th to 8th millennium BC. That's exactly 12,000 years ago. And they date it from the pre-pottery Neolithic. The circles of massive T-shaped stone pillars were erected, more than 200 pillars, about 20 circles, currently known geophysical surveys. It's like an ancient day Stonehenge. Now, concerning these ancient tunnel systems, as we said, certain people know of them, the archaeologists, the engineers, the architects, of course, because they study them and they know exactly where they are. And also, of course, the industrial military complex. There are certain tunnels like this, systems that are in the United Kingdom, known by those who will and should use them in case of emergency. So, obviously, they will also be used by some people in the future. I will leave links below for you so you can research this on your own. Very interesting. Underground cities, Derinkuyu, Cappadocia, Turkey, which was ancient Greece, of course, way before that, before the deluge of 12,000 years ago, 10,000 BC, of Seti, first of ancient Egypt, because of the fact that he believed that the ancient gods out of earth had landed there and left hieroglyphic proof, such as these aircraft of ancient times, which we are using even in the present day. There was a reason why Alexander the Great conquered biblical prophecy of the book of Daniel. I'll leave a link to one of my previous videos detailing how one of the very significant tasks he was in charge of was to find and record all these Nephilim hybrid human creatures east of Greece into the Persian Empire all the way to India. besides the fact that he wanted to get rid of the persons putting under the yoke of slavery all of the free peoples of Europe, Greece, and west of Europe, Alexander the Great was also in secret tunnel systems existed stretching from Scotland to the Mediterranean. Nectanebo, one of the last pharaohs of the original pharaonic line of Egypt, who was also said to be the true biological father of Alexander the Great, was adamant in saving the Abydos temple